Welcome, everyone, to the course this week. We have the pleasure of having Dr. Rick Hanson. He is a psychologist and senior fellow of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. He's the founder of the Wellspring Institute for Neuroscience and Contemplative Wisdom. He is also a New York Times bestselling author. Two of his many books include Buddha's Brain, The Practical Neuroscience of Happiness, Love, and Wisdom, and his most recent book, Hardwiring Happiness, The New Brain Science of Contentment, Calm, and Confidence. We're very honored to have you, Dr. Hanson. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Dr. Spann, and call me Rick, and so maybe I can call you Catherine.
Yes, please. Okay, Rick. So in this course, we mentioned that there are sort of different theories, different ways of defining well-being. And I wanted to just ask you what you mean when you say the term well-being.
I mean the combination of what could be called hedonic well-being, in other words, the ordinary pleasures of many things, having lunch with a friend, finishing a task, watching your kid actually score a basket in basketball, just walking in the forest, feeling good about that. And then there's eudaimonic well-being, having to do with things that are fulfilling and meaningful, but are not necessarily enjoyable. I think back on walking our son when he was an infant crying in 3 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't happy about being woken up at 3 in the morning. It wasn't hedonic, but it was enormously important to me, the most significant and meaningful experience of my life. So the combination of the two is what I think of when I think of well-being, and the two feed each other. So then underneath all that, the deeper source, if you will, or definition of well-being is the ongoing experience of a sufficiency of needs met. For us as humans or any other animal, certainly with a nervous system, if there is a penetrating sense of needs not being met, that takes the animal out of a state of well-being. It disturbs its resting equilibrium in well-being, and then it has to do something to meet its needs, which we'll talk about more, I'm sure, for safety or satisfaction or connection as umbrella terms. So, to put this kind of simply, as a person moves through their day, drawing on resources inside themselves, interacting with the world around them, as they do that in an ongoing way with a sense inside of fullness and balance in terms of safe enough, satisfied enough, and connected enough, then they are in an ongoing equilibrium of well-being. The question is, of course, how to help people sustain that healthy eddy in the stream of consciousness as they deal with an unstable and stressful world.
Thank you for that. Raised a lot of topics that we'll get into. I want to turn now to this phrase that we mentioned in the course called, the phrase is neurons that fire together, wire together. So can you talk about what this means and in relation to well-being?
Yeah, the two go really well together. So the term, it's, as you know, loosely related to the work of the Canadian psychologist Donald Hebb, even back in the 1940s. And we have these two things. Neurons firing are wiring, and neurons are firing when we are sustaining certain experiences, for better or worse. In other words, if we're sort of ruminating about something we're worried about, or we resent another person, those neurons are continually firing, and then they start wiring, so there are lasting traces left behind. Flip the other way, if we're resting in a sense of feeling safe enough, such as a sense of calm strength, or we're resting in a sense of satisfaction, such as resting in an experience of gratitude, or we're resting in a sense of our need for connection met. We feel liked enough, and we care about other people. When we're rested there, those neurons are firing as well, and so they start to wire together too. The nervous system is designed to be changed by our experiences. Thus the term experience-dependent neuroplasticity. The interesting and in some ways unfortunate thing is that it's especially designed to be changed by our negative experiences, because that's what helped our ancestors live to see the sunrise, to pay attention to whatever threatens safety or satisfaction or connection, because those threats have a high level of urgency and impact in terms of immediate survival. That's why, to kind of finish the thread here, it's really important to do what I call taking in the good. In other words, helping your nervous system actually transfer ordinary everyday experiences of feeling peaceful and safe, contented and satisfied, loved and loving in terms of connection. Take those experiences and keep those neurons firing together continuously to help that experience become consolidated in your nervous system to establish a resource inside to help you meet your needs increasingly in the future to maintain your well-being. The takeaway is don't ever underestimate the power that you have to actually change your brain for the better continuously in the flow of everyday life and in effect develop the habit of well-being, body and nervous system and mind altogether that's trained to rest in what I call the green zone, where you feel like your needs are met on the basis of which you deal with the world that's flashing red.
Okay, yeah. I really like this idea of focusing on daily habits in order to sort of build these skills of well-being. Can you talk about that more specifically, techniques that we can do to make these positive actions more habitual in our lives?
Yeah, the essence of it all is really simple, which is it's simply a matter of learning. In the broadest sense, development, transformation, healing, growth. It's all a matter of learning. And the learning that people really care about and makes the most difference is rarely memorizing the multiplication tables. It's learning how to calm down when you're upset. It's learning how to stay present with other people, even if it's challenging. It's learning how to feel good about yourself, even when things don't always go your way, right? That's the learning we really care about. So the how of learning is fundamentally simple. It's the neuropsychology of learning in two steps. First, we must experience whatever we want to grow. So if you want to grow happiness, if you want to grow well-being, you must experience well-being. We can't jack a cable into the back of the head, like in the movie The Matrix, and suddenly everybody's happy or they know how to do Kung Fu. We don't have that technology. The brain's old school. We must play the song, as it were, inside the mind. And then in the second step of learning, turn on the recorder. We must take that experience of whatever we want to develop and grow and help it turn into a lasting change of neural structure or function. Otherwise, by definition, there's no learning. There's no change for the better. We've left all that money on the table. And there's an assumption often, and I speak for myself as well, among psychotherapists or coaches or mindfulness trainers or educators or human resources trainers, that if you just throw enough mud on the walls, something will eventually stick. If you just help people have enough experiences as possible, something will eventually land. And it does tend to land, but it's very inefficient. And meanwhile, negative experiences of worry, irritation, self-doubt, anger and contentiousness, those immediately get transferred into lasting changes of neural structure or function. So the takeaway here from a practical standpoint is to first help yourself have authentic experiences as you move through your day of whatever seems beneficial, enjoyable, and wholesome. Little moments of gratitude when you see a flower, like thank you flower, relief when you finally find a bathroom in a business meeting, a sense of, the point you made in a meeting was a good point, not a dumb point. Your friend smiles at you, just the ordinary little stuff of daily life. Or look for ways to create an experience, like an experience of compassion or an experience of gratitude or an experience of self-worth or determination, resilience. I've done a lot of rock climbing, and if I have to assert myself with people sometimes, I'll pull up the body memory of pulling over an overhang. Or in terms of yoga, the body memory of relaxation or the body memory of determination to hold that pose, for 10 more seconds. Anyway, you can create experiences, not just notice ones you're already having. That's the first step. But then in terms of turning on the recorder, most important of all, keep those neurons firing together so they wire together. Sustain the experience. In our ADD culture, we're skittering on to the next thing continuously before the current good thing has a chance to sift down into long-term storage. So for a breath or 2 or 10, stay with the experience. Open to it in your body. The more broadly, the more globally neurons are firing, the more they're going to be wiring together. There are other little things you can do. I teach a lot of little methods. For example, recognize what's personally relevant about the experience. That's a great way to flag it for long-term storage, because we remember in the broadest sense what's relevant. Also, to finish, track what's enjoyable. The enjoyability of an experience releases dopamine and norepinephrine, two key neurotransmitters in the brain. And dopamine and norepinephrine, in a critically important part of the brain called the hippocampus, flag the patterns of activation. In other words, flag the experiences that are associated with surges of dopamine and norepinephrine, flag those experiences for protection in long-term storage. So they become keepers. And it kind of sounds complicated, but what starts to happen is people develop the habit of learning. They start moving through their day, habitually looking for the good facts all around them, never to ignore the bad facts. This is not positive thinking. I don't believe in positive thinking. I believe in realistic thinking. So seeing what's beneficial, even in the flow of your experience, the relaxation as you exhale, the feeling of settling and coming into a centered place, maybe as you talk with a friend or your cat crawls into your lap, whatever it is. And then when you're having those experiences, kind of really receive them into yourself in an intimacy of present moment mindfulness in the flow of your experience. And wonderfully, as you fill up your own cup, increasingly, there's less of a tendency to reach outside yourself for supplies of various kinds. To put it kind of, to finish maybe in a technical term, cultivation undoes craving. As we gradually cultivate well-being inside ourselves, it becomes increasingly unconditional well-being that's increasingly not based on external conditions.
So mindfulness is sort of this one pillar that you mentioned in the path to well-being. Can you talk about some of the other pillars of well-being?
So if you think of well-being, it's kind of like a standing wave, right? Everything's changing. Our experiences certainly are continuously changing. But in that, there can be a stability of well-being. And in that stability of well-being can be back pain, can be a really heavy heart. My father, at the end of a very long and wonderful life, died about 2 years ago, and actually just a year and a half ago. And my heart was really heavy during, the last months of his life. And yet there was a layer deep down inside that was peaceful and happy, sorrowful amidst, the bitter amidst the sweet. So the point is, a person can actually realistically develop a foundation of well-being inside themselves, or a space or layer of well-being inside themselves that can hold lots of other things. Being angry when someone mistreats you, being worried about a child, feeling fired up when you've got to get something done, being kind of passionate and goofy with friends. All of it's okay. It's rested in or contextualized by this underlying and increasingly unconditional well-being. So that's, first of all, how I'm thinking of it. In particular, well-being is sometimes understood as, that's for upper middle class yuppies at yoga camp. And, well, actually, the more a person's life is challenged, the more important it is to develop this core of resilient well-being. A well-being that is relatively stable amidst life's challenges. And because the harder your life is, the more that you need to draw on that core of resilient well-being to meet those challenges and buffer you against them. So the stressful wear and tear of those challenging experiences doesn't tear you down. Well-being keeps building you up. And it's a shield and a buffer, a shock absorber from the things that would kind of tear you down. So it's actually particularly important in a life that's most challenged. So when you look at well-being, the deep causes are the meeting of needs, the felt sense of needs met. I think there are a lot of people in Beverly Hills and other places who objectively are getting a lot of needs met, but they don't experience it. And there are a lot of people in objectively poor countries of the world, like Bhutan, or objectively poor parts of one's own country, let's say in our case America, that in which people are actually quite contented and loving and peaceful deep down inside themselves. So well-being loosely correlates with external circumstances, but it primarily correlates with the felt sense, the actual experience of needs feeling met, a fullness and balance in needs met, rather than a deficit or disturbance, something missing, something wrong. So repeatedly internalizing experiences of needs met is actually what grows the muscle of well-being, right? So then the question becomes, what are experiences of needs met, and what are psychological resources of various kinds that cause us to meet our needs? And that's where, in a broad sense, I've developed this model of the 12 pillars of well-being that has to do with 3 fundamental needs: safety, satisfaction, and connection, loosely related to the evolution of the brain in the reptilian brainstem, mammalian subcortex, and primate human cortex, neocortex, or as it were, the inner lizard, mouse, and monkey. And what we need to do, to put it in a really corny but memorable way, is look for opportunities multiple times each day to pet the lizard, feed the mouse, or hug the monkey. In other words, to actually experience that needs are met, and then enjoy it, right? The second stage of the neuropsychology of learning, take that experience in. Now, if you think about well-being, in my view, there are 4 fundamental aspects of well-being that cause well-being. First, we need to recognize what's going on around us. If we're clueless, if we're delirious, if we're demented, if we're drunk, we're not seeing what's around us. So we need to recognize what's around us. We also need to resource ourselves. We need to build muscles for dealing with the long run of life. I'm a very, very practical person. Third, we need to regulate. You and I have a background in developmental psychology, and the acquisition of regulatory capacity to be able to calm down or direct motivations, or to find that balance of autonomy and intimacy in relationships, me in the midst of we, staying me while also receiving we. Regulatory function is incredibly important for sustained well-being. And then last, we need to relate. We can't just do well-being inside our little cave or in our own little bubble. We need to relate to the larger world. So if, in my OCD-ish way, if you apply those 4 aspects of well-being, recognizing, resourcing, regulating, and relating, to the 3 needs for safety, satisfaction, and connection, you come up with what I call the 12 pillars of well-being, which in order are, if I can list them here, and people can just think of these as little muscles. And the question is, what's already quite strong, and what would be good to develop? So compassion, mindfulness, learning in terms of recognizing, safety, satisfaction, connection. The 4th pillar for me is grit, then gratitude, happiness altogether, and confidence. And then we have calm, motivation, and intimacy. And then finishing it out, we have courage, aspiration, and generosity. So, for me, those are umbrella terms. Those are key critical resources. And the idea for people is the more that you can grow resources inside yourself, drawing the everyday experiences of life into you with that vacuum cleaner, then in a wonderfully positive cycle, you're more able to meet your needs, giving yourself more opportunities to feel resources are met, which then grow more experiences of needs met, giving you more resources to grow, right? In a wonderfully positive cycle.
So Rick, thank you so much for explaining those 12 pillars and just the entire description of well-being. That's very helpful. I want to end on this idea, or just talk about more about how you meditate and you lead weekly meditation sessions. Can you talk about how this personal practice has affected you both in what you teach, but in also how you manage your life?
Thank you. I think it's really important to realize that what we're really talking about is coming home. And it's the feeling of home. What do you feel like when you're home? When you get home at the end of the day and you drop your bag and plop on the couch, or what do you feel when you come home to yourself? That's what we're really talking about, the feeling of being home. And literally, that feeling of being home is based on the resting state of the body. Our core biology, our sustainable equilibrium condition, is the home base of the body, interacting with the mind. And in that home base, we feel like our needs are being met. There's a sufficiency. of safety, satisfaction, and connection. And this is the home base for monkeys, mice, and lizards, as well as for human beings. We come home. And so the real deep quality here is to tune into what does it feel like to be home? How could I help myself have more experiences of being at home as I move through the day? And when I have those experiences, help them come home into me, rather than living on the basis of what I think so many people do, a kind of chronic inner homelessness, driven from their centered, healthy equilibrium, dynamic equilibrium state into a state of disturbance and deficit, on the basis of which they get stressed into fight, flight, freeze, and go through their life on that basis. So it really boils down to something very simple. Come home, be home, enjoy home, stay home. And that's the feeling in meditation as well. So in my own meditative practice, which I started in 1974, quite a while ago, I use it as a way to kind of come home to myself, to tune into my body, to especially breathing, and kind of feel that and feel like right there that there's an enoughness of air. I'm safe. I'm all right now. You know, maybe in the future I'll fall off a mountain. Maybe in the future, you know, a shark will attack me. I don't know. I hope not. But right now, there's enough air. There's enough, the body has enough food in this moment at least. There's an all rightness there. Also in meditation, there's a coming home to feeling the fullness of the moment as it exists already. You know, like I don't need to go chase for more. This moment of now is already so full, I don't need to grasp for more. And also in meditation, there's a sense of being connected to myself and abiding in relatedness to air. I'm breathing the exhalations of trees, you know. I'm exhaling their inhalations. Family, friends. Ultimately, for me, it edges out into the transcendental, although I'm quite happy to stay inside the natural frame, the secular frame, for people for whom, you know, that's important. So it's all that. So that's the sense of the meditation in a very simple way. And I think that also, as I'm experiencing that, I'm deliberately doing what I'm preaching here, try to practice it, of a receptive intimacy, a feeling of a receiving, a coming in, a landing, sinking down in to me, like water into a sponge, or golden rain sifting down, or, you know, sinking in, being absorbed, so that which my mind rests upon becomes increasingly my own condition. I think about, you know, what do we meditate upon? There are many different kinds of meditation, but, you know, I think in many ways the most powerful meditations are to gradually meditate upon that which calls your heart, that which calls your heart the most. Not as something separated from you, not in a dualistic way, but something in a non-dual sense, already present, already arising, already abiding as that. And the language of this can start to seem a little esoteric or out there, and it's really important that we're talking about something extremely close to experience, very intimate with experience, receptively intimate with experience, for a minute or 10 or 45 minutes or whatever it is a person wants to do. So that's what I'd say I rest in a lot. And if it's useful for people as they do that, and I think it's the most important meditative practice to do is the one you'll actually do. And the one you'll actually do is the one that feels enjoyable, juicy, full, you know, and feeding you and helping you. So find what does that and to bring it down to earth. All that said, just to finish maybe, increasingly, you know, my practice is to sustain a very felt sense that what's happening here is just a local wave in the vast ocean of causes. And that doesn't take me into dissociation or psychosis. It actually takes me into a reliable peacefulness, because all waves pass, but the ocean abides. And so abiding as a local expression of the ocean of allness with some sense of unconditionality, timelessness, always just prior to the emergent edge of now, the front edge of now, more and more peacefully, more and more stably, helping that become increasingly the habit of my mind, even as I do an interview or do emails or take out the garbage or, watch basketball. That's what my practice is about.
Yeah. And it seems like it really is a practice that you do every day. I mean, at any moment of the day, it's about, I think one thing that we can draw from your interview here is that it's about practicing every day and in a way that, you can make enjoyable, but you're also, adding to your own well-being by taking the time to practice.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe to finish here, it's really astonishing in some ways how easy it is to actually help yourself change for the better. It's also astonishing because literally all you need to do is rest your attention on something beneficial and stay with it for a breath or two or three, again and again and again. Neurons that fire together really do wire together. And there are about 20 other mechanisms of experience-dependent neuroplasticity in addition to wiring together. So it's astonishing how easy it is. It's also astonishing how few people do this routinely, and how often we just drift through our day or are swept along through our day or race through our day without taking those little breath opportunities, those kind of like happiness oases or happiness pit stops for a breath or two or 10 to help that experience become hardwired literally into our own bodies. And there's a beautiful kind of quotation I think about a lot from the Buddhist tradition in the Dhammapada. It goes like this: think not lightly of good, saying, it will not come to me. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good. That's our opportunity. Drop by drop, synapse by synapse, breath by breath. They say in Tibet, if you take care of the minutes, the years will take care of themselves, minute by minute, program by program, video by video, MOOC by MOOC. If we do all that, we really, really, really do fill ourselves up. And then we do this for others too. As we fill ourselves up, as our cup runneth over, we have so much more to offer to other people.
Rick Hanson, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.